Oh, you are the most wonderful master a genie ever had.
Well, I haven't had too much experience at this, Jeannie, but you're the most wonderful genie a master ever had.
Oh.
Here.
I am yours until midnight. I would like to do something for you.
No, nothing, thank you.
Oh, please. It will make me so happy.
No, really. Oh, we should have done this a long time ago.
Oh, I want to make you a good wife.
I have a feeling we're not going to have a worry in the world.
They drugged the cast, faked the ratings, and lied about the belly button. NBC's shocking cover-up of what really happened on I Dream of Jeannie is finally being exposed. Larry Hagman showed up drunk, destroyed cameras, and even urinated on the set in front of everyone.
Oh, my poor master. I saw everything, and I am so ashamed. I am not fit to be your genie. I am a complete flip.
Barbara Eden collapsed 3 times from toxic smoke bombs that poisoned the air. The network even buried the real final episode so you'd never know how it actually ended. Here's what they've been hiding for decades. The idea for I Dream of Jeannie didn't come from some network executive or a committee. It came straight from Sidney Sheldon. He saw how popular Bewitched had become in 1964, and he wanted to create something just as magical. After watching the movie The Brass Bottle, he imagined a beautiful genie causing chaos in a man's life. Sheldon didn't just pitch the idea, he went all in. Instead of writing a short summary, he dictated an entire script. That's how strongly he believed in the show. But NBC didn't share his excitement. When they saw the idea, a single man living with a beautiful genie, they freaked out. They sent Sheldon an 18-page list of rules. One NBC vice president even said the show was just a one-joke idea that wouldn't last. Sheldon didn't back down. He reminded them that other hit shows like I Love Lucy and the Beverly Hillbillies were built around one basic joke, too. Still, NBC wasn't convinced. They were so unsure of the show's future that they wouldn't even agree to film it in color. Sheldon offered to pay the extra cost himself, but the network still said no. Despite the rocky start, the show went into production, and it already had something special before filming even began. That iconic genie bottle wasn't some expensive custom prop. It was a 1964 Jim Beam whiskey decanter. The crew painted it with purple and gold designs, added some shapes that looked like stained glass, and turned it into something magical. Barbara Eden, who played Jeannie, later said they used several bottles during filming. On the final day, she was gifted one by the wardrobe lady. That bottle now sits in the Smithsonian, one of the most recognizable props in TV history. The whole show was clearly NBC's answer to Bewitched. Both had blonde women with magical powers, both caused trouble for the men around them, and both were made by the same company, Screen Gems. It was almost like a competition between 2 versions of the same idea. Funny enough, Barbara Eden had already acted in The Brass Bottle, the movie that inspired the show, though she played the girlfriend, not the genie. When casting Jeannie, Sheldon had one rule: no blondes. He didn't want people saying the show was copying Bewitched too closely. But after auditioning several brunettes with no luck, he gave up on the rule and called Barbara Eden's agent. She nailed it, and the rest was history. But Barbara's journey almost ended before it started. NBC had picked up I Dream of Jeannie. The same day, she found out she was pregnant. After years of trying with her husband Michael and Sarah, it should have been perfect news. But it didn't feel that way. She walked straight into producer Sidney Sheldon's office and told him, "You can replace me." She expected it. Television didn't wait for real life, especially not in the 1960s. His face dropped, but instead of firing her, he came up with a plan. They shot 13 episodes in a row before she left for maternity leave. The crew scrambled to hide her pregnancy with loose costumes, layers of chiffon, and clever camera angles. Eden joked she looked like a walking tent. Filming wasn't easy. The pilot episode was shot on a freezing beach in Malibu, but she had to act like she was on a tropical island, barefoot, in a midriff-bearing outfit, teeth chattering between takes. As the show wrapped up 5 years later, real life hit even harder. Eden was nearly 8 months pregnant with her second child when doctors told her the baby had died. It was sudden. It was cruel. "I became numb," she later said, but instead of giving her time to grieve, NBC wanted her back at work, just 2 weeks later. No one offered support. No one talked about mental health. No counseling. No space to break down. She didn't talk about the loss publicly for decades. Instead, she kept working. In 1971, she filmed 3 TV movies back-to-back. On the outside, she was holding it together. But inside, she was falling apart. She'd come home, look at her little boy Matthew, and ask herself, "Why do I feel this way?" She had love around her, but she couldn't shake the sadness. And tragically, that wasn't the last heartbreak Matthew would bring. Years later, in 2001, he died of a heroin overdose at 35. Behind the smiles and sparkle of Jeannie, there was more struggle. Even though Eden was the face of the show, its name, its icon, she was paid less than her co-star Larry Hagman. A lot less. About 30% less. And that wasn't the only thing. When it came to merchandise and licensing, Hagman had the better deal, even though Eden's face was on nearly every lunchbox, doll, and poster. But it was the 1960s. Women in television didn't have much power to demand better, even if they were carrying the entire show. No one was talking about fairness, just ratings. And Eden had to smile through it all. Then came another blow. After the 3rd season, network executives started whispering about replacing her. She was still in her mid-30s, but that didn't matter. They wanted someone younger. Secret auditions were held. Eden found out, and she fought back. With support from producer Sidney Sheldon, and even Hagman, who had his own rocky relationship with her, she pushed back against ageism. She won. The network backed off. Audiences still loved her, and she wasn't going anywhere. But even with that victory, something else was changing. The network pushed for Jeannie and Major Nelson to get married. Eden hated the idea. "She wasn't human," she said later. "She was an entity." To her, the marriage storyline broke the magic. And maybe it did. The show ended not long after. When I Dream of Jeannie was filming in the late 1960s, Larry Hagman wasn't just the star. He was also the biggest headache on set. His wild behavior became legendary, and it all started with champagne. Hagman didn't just enjoy a drink now and then. He would open a bottle of champagne as early as 9 a.m. and keep drinking all day. One day during the 3rd season, he lost it. After getting another round of script changes he didn't like, he exploded. He grabbed bottles of champagne and smashed them against the furniture, the props, anything nearby. Then, in front of the whole crew, he went even further. He unzipped his pants and urinated all over the set. It was so shocking that the show's creator, Sidney Sheldon, told him he needed help. But therapy didn't change much. In fact, things only got worse. NBC had to write new rules just to protect themselves in case he caused more damage. Soon after that, Hagman showed up in a full gorilla costume. He refused to take it off, even when it was time to film. At first, everyone thought it might be some kind of joke. But then it turned disturbing. A group of nuns visiting from a nearby TV show set walked in for a tour. That's when Hagman, still dressed like a gorilla, grabbed an axe and started swinging it over his head. He screamed curse words at the nuns, who were horrified. They had to be rushed off the set. But Hagman wasn't done. He started cutting through cables with the axe until someone finally dragged him away. That day alone cost the production about $20,000. From then on, no visitors were allowed on set. Behind the scenes, things were no better. Hagman told people he was taking vitamin B 12 shots to help with the long filming hours. But the truth was, he was injecting liquid amphetamines to stay alert. It was the only way he could balance all the drinking. By the 4th season, things got so bad that the studio kept a doctor nearby during every shoot. Even his therapist, brought in by NBC, didn't help. The therapist actually suggested he take LSD and smoke marijuana to calm down. Unsurprisingly, that only made his behavior more unstable. Barbara Eden and the rest of the cast never knew which version of Larry would show up each day. Then came the tent. In 1969, Hagman demanded his own meditation tent on set. The crew had to build a black canvas tent in the corner of the soundstage. He claimed it helped him get into character. But people nearby could hear him inside, shouting, crying, and sometimes smashing props. He said it was part of his primal therapy. More than once, filming had to stop while someone tried to coax him out. The director finally had enough and threatened to quit unless the tent was taken down. After a 3-day standoff, the studio compromised. He could keep the tent, but only use it during lunch or after filming. Things hit a breaking point in 1970, during the filming of an episode called The Wedding. Hagman hated the storyline, especially the part where his character was supposed to marry Jeannie. That day, he came back from a long lunch, visibly drunk. When the director asked for one more take of a key scene, Hagman snapped again. He picked up a chair and smashed it into one of the main cameras. The damage cost NBC around $60,000, which would be over $450,000 today. Production stopped on the spot. NBC executives flew in from New York, but instead of firing Hagman, they decided to cover it up. They replaced the camera, paid for the damage, and brought in a psychiatrist to stay on set for the rest of the season. None of this made it to the public back then. Officially, the delay was blamed on technical issues. But behind the scenes, everyone knew the truth. Larry Hagman was unpredictable, explosive, and out of control. When Sidney Sheldon pitched I Dream of Jeannie to NBC in 1965, he had no idea the biggest challenge wouldn't be the storylines or special effects. It would be the censors. NBC liked the idea of a magical genie living with an astronaut, but they were terrified of how it might look on TV. A beautiful woman in a tiny costume, sharing space with a single man? That was dangerous territory in the 1960s. So NBC handed Sheldon an 18-page document filled with strict rules. It told him exactly what Jeannie and Tony could and couldn't do. They couldn't touch. Jeannie couldn't go into Tony's bedroom. Tony couldn't step inside Jeannie's bottle. Even the magical pink smoke she used to travel around had rules. It couldn't sneak under Tony's bedroom door unless viewers saw it come back out again.
What's the matter with you anyway?
Oh, what is the matter with me?
Yeah, you genies are all alike. Promises, promises, promises. When it comes to delivery, nothing, absolutely nothing.
Once, they even had to reshoot an entire scene just because the smoke stayed in Tony's room too long. One censor actually said, "The smoke must never spend the night in the bedroom of a man." It didn't stop there. In season 3, they filmed an episode called Jeannie and the Marriage Counselor. It never aired. The plot had Jeannie talking to a therapist about her relationship with Tony, even though they weren't married. That alone was enough to raise red flags at NBC. But the real problem was the dialogue. Jeannie said she wanted to please Major Nelson, and although the line was innocent, it sounded like a double meaning. The censors demanded that she spell it out every time, like please you with jewels or with money. They tried editing the episode, but in the end, the network decided it was too risky. They shelved it entirely. The episode was shot, paid for, and completed, but it never made it to air. Not even on DVDs. Barbara Eden's costume became another headache. It looked sheer and breezy, but NBC wasn't about to let anything close to revealing show up on screen. So the costume designers had to sew in 3 full layers of fabric. The outside was chiffon, but underneath were 2 thicker layers of silk to make sure nothing showed, not even a silhouette. Under the hot studio lights, it was like wearing an oven. Eden had to take frequent breaks just to cool down. The wardrobe team stayed busy repairing ripped fabric and prepping backup costumes for emergencies. Even the neckline had to stay high, and her belly button? That was completely off limits. The censors made sure her midriff was carefully constructed to cover it at all times. And then there was the blinking. Jeannie's magic always started with a blink and a head nod, arms folded tight across her chest. NBC decided that was too sexy. They thought the motion pushed her chest together in a way that might be suggestive. So they gave her a limit. No more than 12 magical blinks per episode. Writers had to come up with new ways for Jeannie to use her powers, like hand waves or spoken commands. Sometimes they just wrote in scenes where her powers didn't work at all. The rule became so frustrating that Sheldon went straight to the top and asked NBC's president to ease up. Eventually, they raised the blink cap to 15, but only for special episodes with more magic than usual. Even then, NBC kept a close eye on every movement Barbara Eden made. Then there was a belly button controversy. It all started with a strange moment on the set of Dream of Jeannie back in 1965. Barbara Eden, who played Jeannie, was in costume when a reporter from The Hollywood Reporter showed up. He looked at her and said, "I don't believe you have a belly button." Then, out of nowhere, he actually poked her in the stomach. Barbara, caught off guard, decided to turn it into a joke. She told him she'd charge him to see it, raising the price each time he asked. They both laughed, and that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That reporter went on to write a story, playing up the idea that Barbara's belly button had never been seen. Other outlets picked it up, and suddenly, a fake controversy was born. People started asking if NBC had banned Jeannie's belly button from being shown on TV. The story spread like wildfire, and soon everyone believed it. Barbara later joked that she should thank the media for turning a silly moment into something that got the whole country talking. What made it even stranger was that her belly button had actually appeared in early episodes of the show. Her costume included low-rise pants that sometimes slipped just enough to show a little skin. And back then, nobody at the network seemed to care. There were no memos, no rules, no angry letters from the censors. The truth is, those early episodes quietly proved that there was no belly button ban. At least, not at first. But once the media blew things out of proportion, NBC started to play along. Suddenly, the network was very interested in covering up Barbara's midriff. Costumes were adjusted. Camera angles were changed. Even though her navel had already been seen, NBC acted like it had always been off-limits. It was all part of a strategy. They realized the fake scandal was actually great for publicity. People were curious, and curiosity meant more viewers. It got to the point where the network was holding meetings, actual, serious meetings, with executives sitting around a big table, deciding whether or not Barbara's belly button should ever be shown again. Barbara found the whole thing ridiculous. She had to wear a one-piece swimsuit in beach scenes, while other actresses wore bikinis with no issues. But NBC didn't want to kill the mystery. They wanted the public to keep wondering. At one point, a sketch comedy show called Laugh-In planned to do a big reveal of Barbara's navel as a joke.
Oh, I keep forgetting.
And believe me, I like it better this way.
NBC panicked. Not because they were offended, but because they didn't want to ruin the myth. The idea of Jeannie's forbidden belly button had become part of the show's identity, and NBC wanted to keep it that way. Behind the scenes, things got even more calculated. A secret memo was sent to cameramen with instructions on how to get quick glimpses of Barbara's midriff without making it obvious. They were told which camera angles to use, how to light scenes just right, and when to catch a moment where her costume might shift. The goal was simple: tease the audience just enough to keep them watching. At the same time, another memo from Standards and Practices laid out all the rules for the show. Things like they must never touch, and Jeannie must never enter Tony's bedroom. But the real goal was ratings, and the belly button mystery helped deliver them. On screen, I Dream of Jeannie was full of magic, but behind the scenes, it was often chaos, sometimes dangerous chaos. One of the most iconic parts of the show was the puff of colorful smoke that appeared whenever Jeannie entered or left her bottle. It looked fun and harmless on TV, but in reality, it was anything but. When the show switched to color in its second season, the crew stopped using camera tricks and started using real smoke bombs and fog. They mixed dry ice with colored lights to get those bright lavender, green, and blue clouds. The problem was, the chemicals used for that effect made the air inside the studio toxic, and it wasn't a large, airy space. Barbara Eden, who played Jeannie, collapsed 3 times that year because she couldn't breathe. One time, she passed out right inside the bottle set. It got so humid in there, her costume shrank in the middle of filming. The pants tightened so badly that the camera crew had to shoot her only from the knees up. Dick Albane, the guy in charge of the effects, later admitted they didn't have any proper air system set up. Sometimes Barbara had to sit in the fog for up to 8 minutes while they reset the cameras. 8 minutes, no fresh air, in a tiny glass bottle. And that wasn't the only thing that went wrong. One day, they were filming an episode called The Fastest Gun in the East. The idea was to make a bunch of objects float through the air, like Jeannie was using her powers. To pull it off, the effects team set up a system of wires and pulleys using high-tension fishing line stretched across the ceiling. At first, it worked fine, but during one take, one of the wires snapped. It didn't just fall, it whipped through the air like a razor. It hit Bill Daly, the actor who played Roger Healy, just below his right eye. The cut was deep enough that he needed 14 stitches. If it had hit him just a little higher, it could have blinded him. They stopped filming for 3 days while he recovered. But when it came time to explain the delay, the studio called it a minor production issue. That same dangerous setup had been used for 37 episodes before they finally changed it. Only after Bill got hurt did they start adding shields and lowering the tension. Then came the moment that really shook everyone. It was February 1969. They were filming an episode called Divorce Jeannie Style. The inside of Jeannie's bottle had been rebuilt to look more colorful for the later seasons. It sat on a big platform that moved up and down to make it seem like the bottle was tipping or floating. That day, the platform gave out. It just collapsed. 2 crew members were underneath it when it fell. One broke his collarbone. The other got a serious concussion. NBC didn't want anyone to find out, so they kept it quiet. They paid the crew members privately and made everyone sign silence agreements. They even wrote off the filming delay as a technical issue. After that, they had to rebuild the bottle set from scratch. And if you look closely at episodes 83 and 84, you can see the difference. The fabric, the colors, even the shape of the cushions. It's all just a little off from what came before. In the final season of I Dream of Jeannie, something strange happened. The show, which had been doing well on Monday nights, was suddenly moved to a new time slot, Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. That might not sound like a big deal, but it put Jeannie up against a very popular medical drama on CBS called Medical Center. It was tough competition, and many people started to wonder if NBC had done it on purpose. After all, Jeannie had been ranked 26th the year before, with strong ratings. So why move it to a spot where it would almost certainly lose viewers? As it turns out, that wasn't the only suspicious thing going on. Behind the scenes, NBC was quietly talking to Barbara Eden, the star of the show, about doing a new series without the rest of the cast. The plan was to give her character a fresh setting.
Okay, Jeannie, I'm ready.
Shall I blink us to Maryland?
No, we're gonna fly to Maryland. From now on, I don't want you to use any more tricks.
Oh, but it is so simple, Master.
No.
This time in Washington, D.C., where she'd work her magic as an assistant to a female politician. These talks started while Jeannie was still filming its 5th season, but nobody else on the show knew about it. In fact, Larry Hagman, who played Major Tony Nelson, only found out the show was canceled when he showed up at the studio, and a security guard wouldn't let him in. It was a cold ending for a cast that had no idea what was going on. And there's more. Before the show ended, a final episode was filmed but never shown on TV. It was called The Final Wish, and it was supposed to wrap everything up. In this episode, Jeannie starts to lose her powers. She has to choose: stay human and be with Tony, or go back into her bottle forever. In the end, she gives up her magic to save him. It was emotional, maybe too emotional for NBC. The network thought the tone didn't fit the rest of the series, so they shelved it. Fans never got to see the real goodbye. Years later, even more troubling details came to light. A former NBC executive leaked documents suggesting the network had been playing with the numbers. According to the memos, NBC lowered Jeannie's ratings on purpose, especially in the 18 to 49 age group that advertisers care about most. At the same time, they boosted the numbers for other shows. In some cities, like Chicago, the real ratings were actually much higher than what NBC told advertisers. All this happened during the final months of the show's run, right when the decision was made not to renew it. When you look at it all together, the bad time slot, the secret spin-off talks, the hidden final episode, and the possible ratings manipulation, it starts to feel less like a normal cancellation and more like something that was planned. Maybe NBC didn't just let the show end. Maybe they made sure it would.